All right. How's my sound? Am I good? Cool. Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm gonna give it just a minute since I just came on, and also AT&T is feeling the need right now to text me, so my phone has been vibrating like crazy. Also, for this stream, I I I felt like my hands would get kind of like in the way if I wasn't doing anything, and usually on Sunday nights I will color. Tay Bay, thank you for logging on. It's nice to see you. Um, yeah, so usually I will color, but um, fun fact about me is I also know how to knit scarves, like literally only scarves. So I'm gonna do that. I feel like sometimes when I'm talking about tough topics, it's good to have something to do with my hands, or else they're kind of like all in my face and fixing my hair. Tebe, thanks for coming on. I know that you said that you might want to take a nap, so thank you for staying awake for me. If there's anyone else watching, comment, let me know you're there. So thank you for staying awake for me. Why am I hearing myself twice? So I am gonna start by knitting. And so this stream today marks 7 years since I had my hospital intake. And so that means tomorrow I would have been my first day in the hospital. And I know a lot of people will see that as this traumatic experience. And for me, it was the first step of my being able to heal. And I was going through so much that I really needed the hospital at that point. So I had my intake, and then they usually say, well, when a bed opens up, you can come in. And I was really fortunate. We had a scheduled trip to go there. A bed had opened up within a few minutes of me being on the phone with them. So the next morning, I was able to go. And my first hospitalization was for a week. And that was really the first time I had been away from my family. So that was tough. I didn't go away to school, which, trust me, is being in a psych hospital is very different from going away to college. But it was my first time, and I was so nervous. And my family was really nervous. It was the beginning of a lot of uncertainty, but it was necessary for me to be able to stay healthy and stay safe. I was really struggling with having a quality of life before that. So that first hospitalization, um, it really just got me comfortable with being in treatment. And the place that I was in, I'm not going to use names. Some of the experiences weren't awesome, so I don't want to kind of rat anyone out. Plus, it was 7 years ago, and staff has probably changed a lot since then. So, that first hospitalization, I was scared, but I managed. And they did a lot of arts and crafts there, which was really cool. Um, I I made this like clay cat, and my mom still has it like in our living room. So it was a really tough time, but they try to incorporate things that will help you stay calm and stay happy. So arts and crafts became really healing for me. And then I was referred to an outpatient program, and that program was a little bit different. You would go every weekday from, I think it was like 10 to 4 or 10 to 3. And you go and you're in a group environment and you spend the day there. You learn skills, you work through some of your just presenting what's going on in your life, what's working, what's not working. And you would see a social worker every day, and your med person was right on staff there. So that I was in for, I think, about 3 weeks. And at that point, I really needed a higher level of care. So I was transferred actually to their inpatient team at that same hospital. My first inpatient there, I spent, I think, 3 weeks, like, or very close to 3 weeks. And I will say, of all the places, they had you the busiest. Like, from the time you woke up to the time you went to bed, it was like you were doing activities. And while I didn't necessarily get the therapy on staff that I needed, I was busy, and it made the time pass a little bit quicker. And if you're in hospital administration, making sure that your patients have something to do makes such a big difference, because you're just, if you don't have things to do that not only are educational for your mental health but are also fun, then you're not just watching the clock, because a lot of time is spent watching the clock, waiting for meals. Making it a semi-enjoyable experience makes a huge difference in the quality of your stay. So I was there for about 3 weeks. I was undergoing a lot of misdiagnoses and just isolation. And then I went home for about a week, and then I was hospitalized again. I was still so unstable on my medications, and I was experiencing such extreme anxiety. And so I was hospitalized again for about 2 weeks. And during this stay, I realized that I had to withdraw from my senior year of college classes, and I don't think I had cried that hard through my whole treatment. It was absolutely heartbreaking for me. That's something I put so much value in, and then having to put that on hold was really, really tough. But after the 2 weeks, I was, thank God, had wonderful, wonderful insurance, and I was able to go to one of the best hospitals in the country. And my parents were able to drive me. At first, with protocol, I would have had to take the ambulance. I think it was almost 3 hours, but my parents convinced them. They said, you know, she's not suicidal, and we feel comfortable driving her. So I got to go with them, and I went to that hospital. Completely different, but really so kind, and it's one of the best. So I knew there that I would get the best treatment. And they had state-of-the-art nursing stations, and they had a workout room and basketball court, and it was really like the 5-star kind of hospital. So I went there. I think my first day was about 3 weeks, and I got a diagnosis that was no one wants to hear that they have the diagnosis that I got, which was really tough. And sometimes I talk about that, but I usually keep it kind of private because it was really painful for everyone to hear. But I got my diagnosis. I was feeling okay. And so about 3 weeks, I went home. And then I went back about 2 weeks later. And the second time was my last hospitalization. And it was for about 2.5 weeks, I think. Um, and the hardest part of all of it was that I had to spend Thanksgiving in the hospital. And that's, for me and my family, so hard. And I just wanted my family to have a Thanksgiving that was with just the regular people, doing what we always do, because I have younger siblings. And my sister at the time, I think, was in maybe second or third grade. So I really, no, she was probably in third or fourth grade. So I really wanted her and my younger brother to have some normalcy. And then they came up that weekend and visited. But I I went through a lot. I went through a lot when I was hospitalized and after. But it's something that you never think that you're going to go through. And you don't realize how strong you are until you're actually in that situation. So for me, I think of that as a really stressful and difficult time in my life, but it also shaped me into who I am today. And I was able to see the injustice that was going on, the lack of access to treatment, the way people were treated who had a serious diagnosis, um, what made a good social worker, what made a bad social worker. I really did learn from it, and I gained so many insights that I hope will make me a good social worker. So, in all, I spent nearly 3 months out of 6 months in the hospital. So, from this day in 2013 to December, um, was full of uncertainty and difficulty. So I wanted to throw this out there to whoever is listening. I am open to talk about mostly anything from that experience. And so please, if you're listening, ask me a question, provide feedback, anything you would like. I'm here to talk about it. Now speed knitting. And people have asked me, because I have talked about my hospitalizations and my mental health in so many settings. Oh, Pinata, thank you so much. And you're strong. And people ask, like, they say you don't cry or get emotional. And um, if you're listening to any mental health story and someone's not emotional, that's okay. Um, there's a lot of things that do make me cry, but I am so comfortable with where I am now, and I've processed what I went through, that it doesn't emotionally upset me. It actually makes me feel empowered to get to talk about it. And being called strong is, it's very it's very, I don't want to say flattering, but it makes it sound like there's a difference between saying I feel sorry for you and you're strong. With all of my mental health stuff, I never necessarily wanted sympathy. I just wanted people to understand what I was going through. Pinata, I know you're watching, so please ask me a question so I'm not just sitting here knitting. But you're a great knitter. Yeah, scarves. Again, that's all I know how to knit is scarves. Ghost floof. I love that. Interweb's not working. It's fine. Don't worry about it. If you have any questions though, just write to me. I'm here. But I love that ghost floof. We call our dogs floofs, even though the one is not fluffy at all. Oh, hi, Ellen. Thank you so much for coming on. Oh, thank you. um, I actually didn't talk about that yet. So, my life after hospitalizations, and I'm glad that you brought this up. Ooh, OCD koala. I know, poor koala. I dragged him into this. So my life after hospitalizations was arguably more difficult than my life during hospitalizations. I was still not on the right combination of medications, no fault of the hospital. It just takes a lot of time. So I was very sleepy all the time. Um, and I was at a point, I had a boyfriend. Um, I wasn't, I went back to school for one class, but it was really difficult for me. And that took a toll on my confidence. And I just did not feel like I was really living like I used to. And I tried so hard to get back to that feeling that I did have at one point, and that confidence and that strength, and that being able to stay up until 2 o'clock writing a paper. And that wasn't me anymore. I needed to find that again. But it's really hard to be able to focus on rebuilding without recovering. And when I said that I need to just focus on my recovery is when I really started to find myself again. But it was probably 2 years of being alone in my feelings. And I have the most amazing, amazing family and friends, but I still felt so misunderstood. And they were so supportive. Um, but I needed to believe in myself. And I was still having such a difficult time with that. But there were a lot of things that helped. I had a great team of therapists. I qualified to be in the ACT program, which is assertive community treatment. And it's something that every state, hopefully every county around here at least has. And it's when a team of social workers and therapists and doctors work with individuals in the program and help coordinate the care that way. And that was essential. Yeah, the support, your ghost flu, I love that. You're so right. It really is about, I think having the support is completely essential, and you just have to be able to find that strength in yourself. And that's what I did. I had such a hard time doing that. And another thing that was so helpful is I basically had an army of people who wanted to help, which not a lot of people have. And I give credit to Ellen. Ellen is my mother's first cousin, and she basically took me under her wing when I got sick. She had just retired from teaching, and we would go out to lunch together. And just the once or twice a week that we did that was so special. And she had been able to see kind of where I was at each step. There were some times we'd go out to lunch where I couldn't engage. I was so exhausted, and I would be basically falling asleep at the table. And she was there. She understood and didn't judge me. And I think part of a support system is no judgment. It's so much easier to judge someone than to not when you don't understand the experience. But she admitted, she said, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I'm here for you. And that's the most powerful thing a supporter can do. Um, So my last hospitalization was in December. Oh, I I thank you so much for that comment. Um, I didn't think that I would be able to stream in general, or talk about it. I've always done like videos where I edit to make it look like perfect. I didn't know if I'd be able to be vulnerable in front of the camera like this and make mistakes and trip over my words. And I I said I love gaming. I loved crafting. Might as well put a little bit of a mental health spin on it. And this is after years of public speaking. I started public speaking in 2015. Oh, thank you so much, Cappy. And you too. Thank you for those visits in the hospital. My uncle. Um, I so there's a little bit of a timeline of what my recovery looked like. So in okay, so my last hospitalization was in December 2013. I love you too, Hanny. I enrolled in school again. I had a boyfriend that I I I commend him for his patience in the few months we dated. Uh, in school, I wasn't. I was doing okay. Um, I was getting an okay grade, but it was so difficult. And so I finished the semester. I enrolled in another class, and again, I did okay in that one. And um, I my boyfriend and I broke up. I was really just feeling low confidence about that, even though it wasn't really anyone's fault. Um, and that was 2014. During that semester of school, I talked to my mom, and she said that she found out about psychiatric service dogs. And who would have known that there were service dogs who worked with people with mental illness? I knew about the emotional support dogs and service dogs for like soldiers with PTSD, and I didn't know that those same kind of skills could help people with mental illness. So we contacted a an amazing trainer who my mom used to work with, Nancy Banisk. Love her. And she said, well, if you get a puppy, I can help train it to be a service dog. So my mom and I we're not impulsive necessarily, but we're impatient. So we started looking at puppies right away. We said, let's do this. So my mom was looking online and she found this collie puppy who was all white except for his face and his butt. And I just instantly fell in love with the picture. So we went up to meet him, and I knew right away. So we went home after playing with him, and I said, this is, he's my angel. I love him. So we went about a week later and got Joey. People ask me why he's Joey, and he's actually named after a stuffed collie my brother had when he was a baby that we always called Joey. And we kind of joked, like, oh, I could call him Joey, and it stuck. So Joey came into my life. Um, I think by the time all of that was arranged, it was the end of February of 2015. And we immediately started training. I had decided to withdraw from the next class that I decided to take because it just wasn't time, which was really hard. I'm assuming you're knitting something for me. Yes. Cappy, this will look absolutely beautiful on you when I finish it by December. So Joey, we brought him to start training, and we did so much work with him. And it was almost like he was meant to do it. He picked up things so fast. And psychiatric service dogs are trained to complete tasks for the person they work with. And those tasks help a person mitigate going out in public or staying at home with their mental health condition. So Joey would he was trained to go out in public with me and do certain things to help with my anxiety, like if I was standing in a grocery line and someone was too close to me, I could signal for Joey to go between me and that person and make space, and that's called blocking. And I also taught Joey, if I was in a store and I felt like I wanted to leave but didn't feel comfortable just leaving the situation, he would alert me like he would have to go to the bathroom, so I'd have an excuse to leave without having to explain myself, because no one wants that. And he also he went with me to doctor's appointments. We'd go on car rides. He was just my best friend. I'm saying was. He's still alive. He is, I believe, five and a half now. And I just elbow people in the stomach. If I was tougher, I would too. And I have a lot of information that I can share with you guys about psychiatric service dogs, because Joey changed my life. He absolutely changed my life. And my mom created a Facebook page for him that I started to document his training and what we were doing. And even though my mom was writing almost all the posts in the beginning, it made me feel like I was sharing my story with people. And although it was tough at first, I really found so much comfort in that. And little by little, I started writing the posts on his Facebook page. And a huge thing was, again, the support. My mom drove me to the puppy classes. Ellen would go practice the public training with me and Joey. There's I had a whole army of supporters, and I wouldn't have been able to do it by myself. So Joey changed my life, but it's the people that assisted in that also helped so much. So Joey and I were such a good team, and people ask a lot, like, what's going on now. And Joey is living with my parents. He is a retired service dog, and when I got married and moved out of my house, I felt like he had so much of a connection to his dog brother and sisters and my family and how we grew up, that he is just hanging out with my parents and loving it. He has we got his little baby biological sister. And oh, hi, Mom. I was talking about Joey. And he's just hanging there, and I live like 6 minutes away from my parents, so I'm there all the time visiting. So Joey has a very good, pampered life, and he's retired. But I know that if I ever did need him again, we'd probably have to get a bigger vest because he got a little bit fat, but he could jump into action again. So in 2015, toward the end of 2015, I did a writing workshop called the TMI Project. and I shared my story about what I had been through and learned how to write a memoir. So I performed it, and when I did that, it was very, I couldn't believe that I did it. I was speaking in front of people, which I hadn't done in so long. I was writing, which had been so difficult for me when I was really sick. And I was sharing the most difficult parts of my life, but it was so healing. And I performed it, and I said, okay, my story is out there, and this is what I'm going to do. Oh, pinata. So I after I did that, I started my own blog where I began writing about my experiences, and that kind of just took me to the most amazing places. I've been published on um, MTV's Snapchat story, on The Mighty several times. I love The Mighty. And I've traveled to Buffalo to share my story with TMI Project. All of that made me feel like my struggle was worth it, that I was going to be able now to help people going through the same thing feel less alone. So it started off with these hospitalizations that I thought would define me for the rest of my life. And part of it did define me. It defined who I am as um, a person and a social worker and a supporter of others with mental illness. So it led me to where I am today, even though it was a really rocky road to get here. So I'm going to ask again, does anyone have any questions about what I went through, how I'm doing now? Oh, yeah, I didn't finish. Then I went back to school for human services, and I graduated, and now I'm working in the mental thank you, Pinata. And so I went back to school to finish my bachelor's, and I decided to go for human services. And I graduated and got hired to work at the mental health clinic that I had once received therapy from. And then I got certified in New York State as a peer specialist. So I learned how to tell my story in a way that's healing for other people and how to use my experiences to help them. And then in last fall, I went to grad school at Fordham University, where I am pursuing my master's in social work. So everything kind of came full circle, and I'm doing well, but it does not mean that every day is perfect. I've had so many days where I still experience anxiety and fear and low confidence, and all of my treatment and all I've learned has helped me stay stable in all of that and helped me use my coping skills to get through it. But trust me, it is not perfect. And recovery doesn't mean everything is perfect. When you're recovering from a mental health issue, you will still have hard days or even hard weeks. And as long as you're thinking this will get better, then you're recovering. But it's still difficult. I mean, I will always have my mental health issues. I will always experience anxiety, but it is manageable now, and that's what keeps me in recovery, is knowing that I have the skills to get through it and I have the support. Does anyone have any questions about my hospitalizations or what it was like or what I packed or anything? I like to talk about my hospitalizations because no one talks about them. And I think the more we do talk about it, the more comfortable people will feel in asking for help when they need it. And Pinata, I know you're in the next room, so I might just yell at you to ask me questions because you're doing good. Um, if you see in the comment, he is my husband, so he's a phenomenal supporter, and I am so lucky to have met him. Yeah, that's such a good point, Ghost Floof. Um, your brain can trick you into thinking some really negative things, but your brain can also trick you into staying positive. And all of that can be done sometimes with your self talk, or if you are really believing what you're telling yourself, you can even rewire your brain. You fell asleep. I, I'm so entertaining. No, I get it. You have two kids. I would sleep all the time too. Or once in a while. Not saying you sleep all the time. That makes you sound terrible, but I would nap. But your brain is really powerful, and it can help you, but it can hinder you. Yes. Um so in New York, that's a great question, Cappy. In New York, it's actually mandated now that schools teach some kind of mental health in every grade. And they are doing it in different ways. Some people will have programs come in and talk about mental health for a class period, and then they'll say, okay, we did the mental health education piece. That's usually where I came in. I worked with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we would go in and talk to students. And sometimes that was the only education, and other times it was supplemented with other things too. And then some teachers will do it so seamlessly that you wouldn't even understand, and sometimes they don't know that they're doing it. I've met kindergarten teachers who are teaching their students anger management, which I thought was the coolest idea. In centers in elementary school, they're teaching tolerance of emotions and learning emotions. Um, some schools have these special passes to get out of class and go to see the school social worker if they're dealing with something. And other schools will have therapy dogs and use that as a tool to not only comfort people with a mental health issue, but to also educate about mental health. And there are some schools who have a huge budget who are able to do these like meditation classrooms where they're, if a student's going through a hard time, they can go and meditate. And then there are schools that don't have such a big budget who are spending a lot of their resources bringing in people who can educate about mental illness. But integrating mental health, or I like that you said mental fitness, because it really is training your brain and learning skills. And mental illness is just as credible as physical illness. So it's important that people learn about it. I was fortunate in high school, we had a psychology class, and most people take that class because you get to bring in a kid at the end of the year and like analyze them. But that class taught me so much. We watched movies about mental illness. We watched Sybil and What About Bob, and I'm losing it because I can't think of any others. Ordinary People. And I learned so much in that class that ended up helping me in my experience. I knew that schizophrenia did not mean multiple personalities. And I knew that mental illness had to do with brain chemistry or trauma or anything. Anyone can develop mental illness. And it's things like that that I wish that my health class in high school had spent more than a week on mental health because, I mean, you left school knowing about different kinds of drugs, which is great, and learning safe sex, which is great, and those are helpful. But you also need to learn the mental health piece because it can happen to anyone at any time. And I know I graduated 10 years ago, which doesn't seem like that long, but so much has changed since then. And this mental health legislation that it's mandated is a game changer. And I visited the health rooms that I used to have health class in, and it's completely different. And I feel so happy for the kids who are growing up in that environment now because it's becoming normalized. And there's a lot of stigma that still exists, but the more we talk about it, the less stigma there is because you realize that it's okay and there is help out there. That's a great question. That's something that in my work now, I go into schools a lot also, and um, it's just about making that effort, even if it's little. I've actually gotten quite a few rows done while we were talking. This might actually be a scarf before winter. What other questions do you guys have? I'm pretty much an open book, but I set limits if something is not comfortable. Oh, and I was going to mention too, even doing yoga or teaching physical fitness as a means of mental health is really helpful. Um, I know that schools have a lot of, they need to do the fitness tests and the units, and they have so many things that the state requires. But taking a week to do some like mindful walking or jogging and really noticing what's around you instead of some of the more you need this technique, you need to learn softball. It can be really important and help people with skills that they'll need after. I haven't played floor hockey since school, but I have done yoga. And I do want to say that if you are dealing with a mental health issue, you might not have to be hospitalized. There's a high chance that you are going to be able to reach your own recovery without needing to be hospitalized. But if you are, it's nothing to feel ashamed of. There was so much shame from me, and that shame kind of carried over into my everyday life because I felt like I was holding on to this huge secret that, oh my gosh, I was hospitalized. If anyone asks where I was during those 6 months of my life, what am I going to say? What am I going to tell people when I don't have my degree that I was working for? There was so much that I felt ashamed of, and it took such a toll on my confidence and my quality of life. But it's okay. It's okay to go to the hospital if you break your leg, and it's okay to go to the hospital when you are experiencing something that's wrong with your mental health. There are so many stories, and it's interesting. There, you'll always have like a mysterious family member who went to the hospital for something or was just gone, and isn't talked about. You'll talk to people and you'll be like, yeah, my aunt, she had depression and she had to go away to go into some care, and it's kind of just kept quiet. And then you realize you're like, oh, no, she had like depression or anxiety and had to go to the hospital. It wasn't, yeah, she became psychotic. It usually is she had a mental health issue that couldn't really be explained. I always think that's interesting. There's usually a family member like that, or like back when they were called asylums, that they were gone and no one talked about it, and so it's interesting. Talk to your family about it. Does anyone else have any questions or comments or anything? I'm here. And even if you don't comment now, or you think of something later, just reach out to me, because I'm pretty much an open book. And I'm going to post this video also um, on YouTube, so check that out. But I just want to have open conversations because not everyone feels ready to talk about it yet, but I want people to feel okay. Oh, thank you, Mom. And I do have to say that I was lucky in my support system. My mom is an educator. She has a degree in special education, and she might not have understood everything about mental illness, but she was able to advocate for me. She learned. And my dad, he had not been exposed to mental illness. He was, we come from a pretty conservative area, and so his exposure to mental illness was with me. And he took the time and learned about it, and learned how to be a support to me and what he could do. And although he might not have been in the doctor's office with me, like my mom, and saying what was going on and exactly the timeline of what happened, he drove to every single appointment, and he drove to Boston with my family anytime when I was in the hospital, and he would go and sit with me in waiting rooms when I didn't feel comfortable. So there are so many ways that you can be a support to the people you love. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to be a mental health professional to support someone with mental illness. You just have to care. And there is a learning curve. You don't have to be an advocate right away. And you can stumble on your words, and you can say, oh, that person's crazy. You can say that as long as you listen to someone say, okay, that's why you shouldn't say that. That's stigma, and that's actually harmful. And then you can correct yourself. Oh, I did. You know what? I got sidetracked. I wanted to give a shout out about something. So when I was really struggling and I was out of school, my mom had gone back to working. I got this amazing opportunity. Ellen's daughter, so my second cousin's daughter, I don't know how it works, but Ellen's daughter, who I just consider my cousin, Laurel, she is a fashion designer, and she and Ellen asked me if I wanted to just help out. And she does these incredible, amazing metal accessories and outfits, and I helped her get ready for her fashion show during Fashion Week by cutting some of the metal and measuring. And what was amazing was that I was seeing something tangible that I was creating. And it gave me a sense that I could do things, I could still do things, and that I was contributing. I worked with her almost every day during the week, and we would have lunch. Ellen made the best chicken salad in the world. And we would sit and we would talk, and I felt like I was hanging out with my friends again from college, and it was so powerful. And I got a call from Laurel one morning, and she said, "Can you come over now? We have to ship something to Beyonce." And I said, "Yeah, I'll be right over." I think I might have like thrown up first and then come over. But we, I felt so in touch with my creative side, and I felt like I was needed, and that was huge in my recovery. And I got sidetracked about something about, I think, Joey, when I was going to mention that, but Laurel and Ellen, they gave me something that I said, you know what, I can't work right now, but I can help. And that created a beautiful friendship between me and Laurel. She's amazing. I'm hoping, so I one of my a project that I want to do on my streaming channels is to interview people who either deal with mental illness, work in the community, work on social justice, and I'd love to interview Laurel at some point because she was a real catalyst in my ability to recover and change. And she gave me that confidence that, yes, I was sick, but yes, I can still contribute. And she's also very cool, and I love her. And yeah, that safe environment too. I was creating a safe environment for someone who's dealing with mental illness, or for yourself. Um, that's crucial in feeling able to open up about what you're going through, and also being able to feel relaxed and comfortable and safe. And she provided that. There are a lot of times when you go into a doctor's office and it's very sterile and you don't feel comfortable, and it's just kind of answering yes or no questions, and that's about it. There's such a difference between that kind of environment and going into a therapist's office where they have water fountains and couches, and it's all about creating that environment. And so, working in your house, I felt safe, and you all provided that environment too, where I could talk about what I was going through and not feel judged. So that's huge. That's absolutely huge. And workplace stress is a huge contributor to mental health issues, anxiety, and depression. So it's important to feel safe and to feel comfortable, because the world doesn't provide that all the time. So create an environment for yourself. Yeah, TMI Project, I have to also give them a shout out. They, not only did I do the workshop and it changed my life and it helped me open up about everything, but then they also went the extra step and they included me in so many of their initiatives. And I was able to travel with them, and I went to schools, and I talked about what it was like to not only live with mental illness, but to also write and share about your struggles. And that was huge for me. It showed me that I wasn't alone, and that you didn't have to feel alone. They do such a great job of helping people talk about their trauma. And I didn't experience trauma in the typical way. My mental illness started not from the trauma, but the trauma came while I was being treated for mental illness. And even though I didn't have any terrible hospital experiences. Being in a hospital is a kind of trauma because it strays from your ordinary. A it's different from your sense of security that you usually have, and even though nothing truly traumatic happened there, I it was still a sense of trauma in that it was new and unfamiliar, and it took me out of my safety zone. So it trauma's interesting. Trauma's really interesting. They say even winning the lottery is traumatic because it's a change from your ordinary and it's a shock. So trauma can come in many forms. So in another minute, I want to wrap up with you guys. I need to finish this row, but I want to keep having these conversations, and I'm so thankful for everyone who tuned in. This needs to be talked about, and once I know who I'm going to be able to interview, I have some friends who are super excited about it, and I'm happy to have them. I'm going to post a schedule of when I'm going to interview people and who I'm interviewing and what topics we'll cover. So I appreciate people who are going to follow through with that, and I want to create a space where you can ask questions and feel comfortable talking about your own experiences, because that's what gives you a sense of power. And mental illness, a lot of times it can take away your feeling of control, but being able to share your story gives you back some of that control and lets you take back the power over your life. So I thank everyone so much, and stay tuned because there's a lot of cool projects that we're working on, and I'm happy to have you all with me. Thank you guys. Oh, and tune in tomorrow. I'm going to do the same Sunday night reset that I've been doing for the past 2 weeks. So I think I'll keep working on my knitting project during it, but it'll be low key, and we'll just talk about the weekend and what we're going to do for ourselves during the week to stay mentally healthy. So tune in tomorrow night around 8. All right, guys. Thank you so much.